From foreign policy, to immigration, to healthcare, to infrastructure. Those are some of the issues that are concerning Joe Reynolds. And that's why he's running against current United States Senator Lindsey Graham in 2020. I speak exclusively with Joe for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. And of course, subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Joe Reynolds, it's so good to meet you. Pleased to meet you, Quintin. I've seen a lot about you on YouTube, and you've got quite a cast of characters coming in for your interviews.
Indeed. Well, I know that you are here on Quintin's Close-Ups because you told me this on Twitter just recently. You said this quote, "Quintin, I am a United States Senate candidate, GOP, running against Lindsey Graham. I've seen some of your interviews, and I believe I have something worthwhile to say." What do you have to say now when you think of Lindsey Graham and that particular district, particularly for the United States Senate?
I think that Lindsey Graham has been in there a long time, and that he's a political animal. He's very good at what he does, but what he does is get reelected. Politicians are very good at getting reelected, and they're very good at raising money for their next reelection, but they're not very good at solving problems. You see it in our Congress. They've kind of devalued themselves and handed over their power to the executive branch and to the judicial branch, and now they can't seem to get anything done. So I see Lindsey on TV a lot. He says a lot of things, but what does it all amount to? Is he really serving South Carolina? I don't think so. I'm going to go up there for only one term. I'm not going to raise money for myself again. I'm not going to fundraise for other candidates. I'm not even going to fundraise for the Republican Party. So when I go up to Washington, it's just going to be for South Carolina. I'll be an independent voice for South Carolina and the country instead of always trying to look for donors and fundraise. I'll be working for you 5 days a week up in Washington, and I'm not going to fall into the trap that I need to get reelected again. I'm only running for one term.
You say problems right now, obviously, in this country. What are those problems that you're seeing?
Well, I see problems like immigration. It's funny, I recently saw a video of Lindsey Graham talking to Meet the Press from 2007.
Right.
And they were talking about this immigration problem back then. So it's been going on for 15 years now. I think President Bush tried to get something done, President Obama and the Congress tried to get something done. It never really happens because it seems these politicians go to Washington, they get invested in their own re-elections, and they don't really consider the country. Lindsey Graham puts himself first, and America ends up coming last.
America coming last. Talk to me more about America, because obviously you are a native. You grew up here in Charleston.
I didn't grow up in Charleston.
Excuse me.
I am a transplant, so I do have a red mark against me already. I grew up in New England, and then I went to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, and I became a chief engineer. And then I've been sailing ever since I left the academy. For the last 30 years, I'm an engineer. So when my wife and I first started looking at politics and say, why isn't it working in Congress? I started to look at it like an engineer. What's the problem? What's the solution? Well, the problem is all this money and their need to get reelected. Now, if you had term limits, maybe some of these people could come together and compromise. But since they're always looking to their next reelection prospect, they tend to grab the money and run to the edges. The big middle of America who wants the problem solved gets left out. So we have problems like immigration, healthcare, climate change now, which is a big issue in Charleston, big issue in America. We also have Social Security and Medicare in the not-too-distant future. They're not really talking too much. They're not really coming together. There are compromises available, but people, at the very last instant, leadership in Congress, either Chuck Schumer or Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi, holds the country apart because they feel that they can gain some leverage or gain some more power at the next election. But it never really works out that way, Quintin. We go through an election, we think, okay, now we're going to fix some things, and it gets worse and worse. We don't fix anything because they keep thinking the next election will gain more power. The Democrats or the Republicans will gain more power. So the problem is we never compromise, and I think if we had senators and congresspeople who said to the American people or people of South Carolina that we're not going to run again. That way, we can make the choices that need to be made. We can make the compromises that need to be made. And I think the middle of the country really wants that. I know the edges fight a lot, and you see it on TV, and you see it on the internet and social media, but I think most Americans really want to get things done.
You talk about compromises. Obviously, you mentioned one of them. What are those other compromises that are available right now?
Well, there's a healthcare law up there trying to make fixes to the Affordable Care Act. Let me retrace a moment. My party, in their wisdom, I guess, they thought it would be a good idea for attorney generals all across the country to file a lawsuit against the ACA and try to get it overturned as unconstitutional. Well, I think that's going to take away people who are just made it onto Medicaid, young people who just got onto their parents' plans, and people with pre-existing conditions. You know, I know a young person with cystic fibrosis. If you start to take those pre-existing conditions away from people, that's going to leave a lot of people off the rolls. It's going to be very expensive. We're going to be worse off. So I disagree with that. I think there are Republican attorney generals out there in Montana and Ohio who said, you know what, we don't agree with this lawsuit. We need to fix what we have. There's a bill up there, Lamar Alexander and Patty Murray Act. Now that bill almost came together. It was very, very close. And then at the last instant, you know, somebody put in some poison pills and they couldn't get it done. There's also a bill up there with Joe Manchin and Susan Collins. And they had a bill for, allowing states to have a little bit more flexibility to figure out what they needed to do. And that bill didn't cross the finish line. Leadership doesn't want it. Either the Democrats or the Republicans, Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi, always try to put something else in to gain some leverage, whereas the American people seem to lose out. Those are two things on healthcare. On climate change, the Republican Party has to step away from this idea that it's a hoax. It's not a hoax. When the water's lapping at your door here in Charleston or North Charleston or James Island, you know that there are problems, and Mayor Tecklenburg's trying to address it, Charleston County Council is trying to address it, and people are really looking at this hard now. Republicans can't go around saying there's no such thing as climate change. So we've got to stop doing that. Secondly, we have to start thinking about not only mitigations, but how are we going to solve it in the future? And we may have to go to a carbon tax. Now that's something that Democrats and Republicans can agree to, but it doesn't get put on the table.
That carbon tax, who in the Democratic Party would you work with if you were to be elected to Washington?
Well, I think that some reasonable members of the Democratic Party do want to do something about carbon tax. I don't have the names available at this moment, but I think there are people in the Northeast and Democrats who think that the Green New Deal may not be the best way to go. I think there's a candidate running for president, John Delaney, and Hickenlooper, who believe that we can't go too far to the left because then we're not going to get Republicans to vote for it. We have to come to the middle, compromise on things like this, and come up with solutions. We can't say, well, we're going to take over all American industry and make it the way we want it. That's not going to work. On the other hand, we can't say that climate change is a hoax. We have to be able to do these big problems in a bipartisan manner. And in the past, they used to do that, with Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan and some Republicans and Democrats would get together and they would fix Social Security or they would fix immigration. It took a lot of back and forth, but they'd work through committees and they'd get together compromises. Now, I know this carbon tax can go a long way in committee, and Republicans and Democrats can work to push it out of committee. But the problem with the committees now is the leadership seems to think that they hold the keys to everything. So Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell decide what's to be done. I'd be an independent voice up there, and I think that if people saw me beat Lindsey Graham and understood that, hey, we can have sincere people who just want to do some things for the country, then we can get other people up there on the Democrat side, on the Republican side, who also want to do things for the country. Because I think there's a big middle of the country that really wants solutions to problems, doesn't want to just muddle along fighting all the time.
If you were to go up to the upstate, say, and talk with somebody at a roundtable discussion at a local barbecue, how would you talk to them, or how would you define America to them right now?
I would say to them, I understand a lot of you Trump voters, a lot of you really wanted to blow up the system. You saw that there was something wrong up there. You instinctively knew that we had to do something different. Well, you did blow it up in a way with the presidency, but I think the problem is not the presidency. I think Congress only has a 17% approval rating. That means that both Democrats and Republicans know the problems in Congress. We really have to keep our eye on the ball because Congress now barely gets anything done. They can barely get a budget passed without a shutdown. They have a 17% approval rating, and I think both Republicans and Democrats want to see them do big things like infrastructure, like immigration, like climate change. I know that people have a hard time envisioning a solution for immigration. It's really on their minds that it's not fair that illegal immigrants come here and then they take advantage of our system, and I'm sympathetic to that. On the other hand, there are some, young dreamers who are here through no fault of their own, and, we need to work. I'm sure that a lot of Republicans and even hard-right people sympathize with their plight. The problem is each side, the Democrats and the Republicans, think they have an advantage in this. Whereas Democrats want border security, Republicans want border security, Democrats want something for the dreamers, Republicans want something for the dreamers. There's a compromise there already. It's just that leadership won't allow it to happen.
You talk obviously about, immigration and whatnot. Obviously, there's a debate right now about tariffs on Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you in this discussion right now?
Well, I think I look at President Trump trying to do something, but there seems to be not a well thought out plan. It's obvious that this is going to hurt a lot of American businesses, including car manufacturers. Texas is going to have a tax. Senator Cruz, who's one of the most, hard-right people there is, who really wants border security, says it's going to hurt Texas. People in Michigan, it's going to hurt. You're going to really hurt a lot of Americans first before you see results from Mexico. I understand that it does seem unfair that Mexico, is allowing these people to move from Central America to our border and apply for asylum, and that's not right. But the way to fix things is to have people in Congress who want to fix it. I think President Trump gets very frustrated with Congress because he sees they never have a solution. I think if the solution is there and they come to an agreement and they put it on his desk, he might sign it. Unfortunately, we don't have that Congress right now.
And let me stay in the world news right now, because obviously there's another talk about Saudi Arabia.
I lived in England for 10 years, so I know a little bit, more than 10 years. I know a little bit about Europe. I know a little bit about England. I've been all over the world helping our military, bringing equipment over to Iraq, and bringing equipment over to Afghanistan, helping our military in Korea and Okinawa, and I've been doing this my entire career, bringing Apache helicopters over, bringing broken vehicles back. So I know a little bit about our allies because I've also lived in Britain for some time. And I know a little bit about the world because I work with different people from different cultures all the time. When I'm a chief engineer and I'm in Europe, I have to work with people, Europeans, sometimes Romanians, sometimes, Belgians, and, to try to get things done. I'm an engineer. I'm looking to solve problems. I'm not looking to create problems. Politicians are very good at getting elected, but they're not very good at solving problems.
How do you solve this problem with Saudi Arabia arms?
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think that President Trump is wrong on that issue, and I don't think we should be selling arms to Saudi Arabia. And when we have this leader in Saudi Arabia who has obviously murdered a Washington Post journalist in Turkey, there were never any repercussions for him. Congress was very upset. The president really didn't do anything. And here we are, acting like nothing's ever happened. Congress used to be able to be in charge of these kind of things like treaties, tariffs, sale of arms to other countries, the declaration of war. All these things used to be Congress's responsibility, but they've little by little given up those responsibilities because they can't come to an agreement.
An agreement. What else would you want the United States of America to agree on right now as far as issues?
Well, I mentioned immigration, I mentioned healthcare, climate change, and infrastructure. It's obviously our roads and bridges have issues. And, here's the problem again. I saw the bill, the proposal. They said it was a $2 trillion infrastructure bill. That's all they mentioned. President Trump and Nancy Pelosi got together. However, then I see, Nancy Pelosi, she's throwing in extra things at the end. And these are things that nobody's going to agree with. They're Democratic talking points that haven't had a chance to get airing, so she throws them in at the very end thinking, well, it's such a big bill that, we can pass a bunch of other things with it. I don't want these poison pills. I think that we should try to get things done with fixing our roads and our bridges, because I've been to places like Germany and the Netherlands, and I see their roads and I see their bridges, and I think this is and their airports and their ports, and I say, these are considerably better than American ones, and I'm a little embarrassed to tell the truth.
What is the future of ports here in South Carolina in your mind?
I'm pro ports. I'm a chief engineer. I've been in the maritime industry. I see the Leatherman terminal is going in right as we speak. There's a lot of construction, but it seems just driving down the road, you see the signs on Sproul Avenue saying we need workers. And I think right now South Carolina is having a little bit of trouble getting these construction workers and finishing these jobs because of the tight labor market. But I see a vibrant port industry. Charleston's a big port. I go to it all the time on my ship. Many other ships go to it. Wando Terminal. I go to North Charleston Terminal. There's the TC dock. There's the weapons station, which I've been to many times, picking up equipment for the military. Now we have the Leatherman terminal, and we also have the port downtown. So ports are good jobs. The labor at ports are good middle-class jobs where people make good incomes in. And it's very important for Charleston to keep these jobs.
How do you loosen up this labor market in your mind?
I don't know. I think that it will work itself out in some way. I know some people say we should let more immigrants in. I know some people say, keep all the immigrants out. But I think that if we had an ability to look at our immigration solution, not just DACA for the border wall, but the next big immigration solution would be changing our immigration laws to better serve us, and in return for some level of work permit for the 10 million people that have been here for 10 years or more. Everybody's going to say that's amnesty. I don't care. There isn't a way to do it without bipartisan support. You have to have Democrats and Republicans working together. If they don't, these people are just going to be here forever, and they're not going to be included in society. Secondly, you're not going to get, as a Republican, the immigration reform that you want. And the immigration reform we want is to get nurses and care workers and things like that into South Carolina and into the country, because, we want a merit-based system because we need these people. If we have a family-based system all the time, then we may bring people in that are good for the country, but they may be low-level skilled workers that we don't really need. It's obviously that we need nurses and we need care workers and things of that nature, and we could reform our immigration system like Australia, and people would be more pleased with that system and regard immigrants as something that we really need in America. Instead, we have this fighting all the time about, illegal immigrants, and President Trump really takes it to the next level and makes them all to be drug dealers. I worked with one. I work with them all the time. My boss was an immigrant. He just got his citizenship. Nice guy. His boss was an immigrant. He got his citizenship. These people are coming to America for work, but because they see the advantages to their country. We also have to reform the immigration system so that we have college students who come here from overseas and say, hey, you know what? I really like America. America's been really good to me. You know what? Why don't I stay here for a couple of years? Yes. But now, after those couple of years are over, it seems that, the Trump administration is kind of pushing those people away. Those are the people we really want. We want to keep those skilled people who want to stay in America, who can be entrepreneurs, who can create jobs, and can make America the way it is. America isn't just it's not just a geographic boundary. America is us. It's you, it's me, it's all the people together. That's what makes up America. To go around saying, well, this is a border and this is a border and that's America and that's that. It's all of us together doing things together, and I think we've kind of stopped doing that.
Describe to me the following one word. You just mentioned about climate change. Offshore drilling.
I'm against offshore drilling. No.
And you talk about no. Let me expound on that, because obviously the Trump administration has their obviously issues with that. Where should the Trump administration be on this issue?
I think the Trump administration should probably just give up on it. It's obviously most of the coastal states on the East Coast do not want new offshore drilling off their coast. We already have it in the Gulf of Mexico. We already have a lot of exploration in Alaska. They've opened it up in Alaska a little bit. We got the Keystone, the pipeline going through from Canada. So I don't think it's necessary. It seems almost virtue signaling. We're going to drill regardless. I don't even want to start the project because I don't even start the seismic testing, because once you start the process, then it's very hard to stop it. Everybody can say, well, they're just testing. Now, later, we can stop it. No, I think no testing at all.
One word to describe gun violence.
Heartbreaking.
Bobby Emanuel 4 years later.
Yes. We still haven't closed the Charleston loophole, have we? It's still a 3-day waiting period, and then you can buy a gun regardless. I think that gun violence and gun violence measures should be looked at in Congress. I'm going to go up there. I'm not taking any PAC money. I'm not taking NRA money. I'm not taking money from gun rights organizations. So, and on the other hand, I'm not taking money from unions, and I'm not taking money from Everytown for USA. I'm just going up there as an independent actor. Nobody yanks my chain when it comes to gun legislation. We have these red flag laws. I know young people, I know a young woman who is mentally disturbed. If she had ever gotten a weapon, it would have been very bad. So these red flag laws, I agree, we need to work on those. The Charleston loophole, we need to move forward on that, close that loophole. We need to look at the age of people getting automatic weapons. And in this last heartbreaking episode in Virginia, the guy had a silencer. What are we doing with silencers? I think silencers should be banned. Extended clips should be banned. We're not making it a lot easier for these shooters to go around and kill people. If you walked into this office here today with a silencer, you and I wouldn't even know what was going on, because apparently it sounds like a chair being moved across a floor when they shoot somebody. All these people could be shot. We could be sitting in here having our conversation. We wouldn't even know it. They're talking about in schools, when shots are fired, they go in lockdown. They understand what a shot is. If somebody goes in with a silencer in a school, you don't even know there's a shooting. So we need to ban silencers. We need to close the Charleston loophole. We need to look at these red flag laws, as they call them, and we need to have universal background checks.
Describe to me the following one word again. What would you do on day one if you're elected?
I want to bring in one word, ethics.
Okay. What's that one business that is the top business in your Senate district?
The top business in South Carolina, as it is in the rest of the country, is fixing democracy. We don't have small goals here, Quintin. We want to fix democracy in America. We want to make it a Congress you deserve, not that you get. So that when you have congressmen going to Washington, when they get out, they don't automatically become lobbyists. That's not right. When you have congressmen going to Washington, or congresswomen going to Washington, when they arrive there, they don't immediately start fundraising. So I want an ethics rule in the Senate that says when you start the work week in Washington, there's no fundraising. There's no fundraising until you leave for your home state, where you finish work on Friday afternoon.
What about BMW? What about Mercedes-Benz? What about Boeing?
What about them?
There are top businesses here in South Carolina.
Absolutely.
So
What's the question?
Well, I'm going to get to it.
I like businesses in South Carolina.
So how do you keep them going if you were elected as a senator, that is?
Well, I think the state has a lot of responsibility for that. You know, Governor McMaster and the state have a lot of responsibility as far as getting companies like Boeing to come, companies like BMW, and companies like Mercedes and Volvo to come and show that our economy is moving up. I do feel it is moving up. But, you know, there is a tight labor market, and that's affecting some of the work around here. I welcome new companies coming to South Carolina, and I look forward to that. But we can't leave behind the small businesses that really hire most of the people in South Carolina. These small businesses really struggle sometimes with issues like giving health care to their workers, you know, and taxation. I've heard that this tax reform bill didn't really help them out because a lot of them are pass-through companies where they didn't really get that level, that 40% tax cut. We need to help small businesses in South Carolina, not just the big businesses. The big businesses, they're going to do all right anyway. They're going to get a break from the state. They're going to get a welcome mat. The small businesses in South Carolina, sometimes they struggle. They struggle with paying workers. They struggle with finding workers. They struggle with health care for workers. And I think that we can have more legislation in Congress that says that we do something about small business, like give them a $25,000 tax break on their first $25,000 of profit. The big businesses, you know they're going to do okay. You know Apple and Google and Boeing, they're going to be okay. Even with this problem with Boeing recently, you know they have a lot of other planes they're selling. They're probably going to be fine. The small guys are the guys that get affected, that are always week to week, month to month. How am I going to make it? You know, and they struggle with a lot of things, and we should be helping them more.
If you were in Congress today, would you have an investigation about Boeing?
I might. I'm an engineer, and I think that there's something wrong with the system they've had, and I'd like to let the FAA handle it. They have a lot of good engineers in the FAA, and we'll see what they come up with from their investigation. It seems that they're not pushing it under the rug. They understand there's an issue. I think they're getting a lot of pressure from Congress people. I think they're getting a lot of pressure from constituents about this issue, and I think the FAA will probably do a good and rigorous job.
Joe Reynolds, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
Really nice to meet you, Quintin. I hope you see you again.
Yes, sir, you will.
All right.
Thank
Great.
you.